everyone that Mary is here to get us coffee and donuts.
I should have made sandwiches.
You should have. You guys should have gotten together, maybe done that.
I'm really upset that I didn't bring sandwiches to school. I thought about making cookies, but I thought my sleep was more important.
You're wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Like, I could make cookies, or I could go to bed.
Did you start the camera again?
Yes.
This is Hannah. All right, and this is Cuba. All right? Cuba, Hannah.
She's kind of hidden by the podium.
Hannah has come today as Audrey Hepburn. That's what we do in this class. We come as famous people. Miles came as Allen Ginsberg / Jack Kerouac.
Yeah.
Okay. The United States and Cuba were really good friends for a long time. The president of Cuba, look at your notes, not at our pseudo Hepburn over here. The head of Cuba, the president, was a guy named Jose Batista. And Batista was good friends with America. Havana was kind of like Vegas in a couple regards. One, first of all, in Havana, they had legal gambling. Secondly, in Havana, the mob was everywhere. In fact, if you watch The Godfather, specifically The Godfather Part 2, a lot of it takes place in Havana. Third, American companies owned a lot of the wealth. They were seen as an exploiter of Cuban wealth. And Batista was loyal to us. But there was a very young, 31-year-old lawyer who was fighting in the mountains of Cuba. In the Sierra Madre, fighting in the mountains of Cuba, trying to get a foothold to overthrow Batista. And his name obviously was Fidel Castro. He also had a revolutionary friend that was a doctor. Che Guevara. And where was Che Guevara from?
Argentina.
Venezuela, but yeah. Maybe Argentina? I think it's Venezuela.
He did something in Argentina.
He kicked an old school. On January 1st, on New Year's Day, 1959, the Castro forces successfully take over Havana. And Batista is no longer in power. He's overthrown. And Castro becomes the de facto dictator of Cuba. Now, to say that Castro was all in with communism in 1959 would be a mistake. He was not. In fact, at some point during his revolution, this has been going on for years, he had come to America to get money for support of his revolution, and many Americans saw him just as a revolutionary guy to overthrow like the corrupt Batista. Batista was really corrupt, right? A lot of the American aid corrupted him. He was corrupt. And so Castro was seen not just as, he wasn't seen as a communist, he was seen as an anti-corruption guy, right? He really wasn't all in with the Soviet Union until later. But he was starting to sort of sing the praises of total equality, working rights, and he was saying all the buzzwords that was getting the American CIA really, really scared. Now Castro is still living. Currently it's 2/15/2013. Just in case somebody watches this like in 10 years and Castro's dead.
We need to take precautions.
Right. It's all about integrity. And
If you're going to add this on YouTube today, doesn't it say the date at the bottom?
Yeah, but
well, maybe, but people don't always pay attention to
you're
that.
doing.
So what's going to happen though? Kelly told me this is my Steve Jobs look today.
Yeah.
That's what I thought when I saw
Yeah.
you Paul. I was like, I've seen that as Steve Jobs.
Alright. Khrushchev saw this though as an interesting possibility. Because you have this guy who's saying all the sort of pro-communist buzzwords. Che Guevara, an avowed communist, was one of his good friends. And this is a breeding ground to make Cuba communist. But why is this great for the Soviet Union? 90 miles from Florida.
It's okay, nobody likes Florida anyway.
I do.
No, you don't.
They can't
You don't
Now, we see this as a break with the Monroe Doctrine. The CIA makes it its job to try to get rid of Castro. And when I mean makes it its job, I ain't kidding. It has been, I think, 11 assassination attempts we tried, or at least plots to kill him.
Jeez, how
We're really bad at this. One of them is, and I'm not saying we did this, we actively had an attempt, but we had discussions, and some were attempts. The Bay of Pigs was an attempt, right, to get rid of him. We actually openly talked with the Mafia and to put a hit out on Castro. The Mafia didn't like him because he was bad for business, right? The Mafia was running Havana. In fact, one reason why Vegas becomes so popular is why? Because Havana's gone. And it was a big deal because most of the gangsters and most of the people who were going down there, they're from the East Coast, right? Miami was a big hub, and it was really close. Nevada's nowhere close. It's the middle of the freaking desert. I mean, Havana, right? You've got tropical weather. You've got the beach, right? It's pretty awesome. Now we have to go out to the middle of the freaking desert? This is crap.
Protestant women? I mean, like, really? I don't
Do
know.
what?
Guys and Dolls last year, Sky Masterson took it down to Havana.
Guy Masterson. Yeah, but Protestant women, they're mostly Catholic down there. So
No, he
women are.
took, what's her face? Alexis down to Havana with him.
Oh, right.
They
They got married down there, though, right?
Yeah, they got married at the end.
Right. That's awfully nice.
That's where Dirty Dancing started.
I was last year when I went and you guys. I don't know, it wasn't just for me, but during the Baylor game when you guys brought the score, that was awesome.
It was me. I was like, Miss Haddix, since it's the basketball game, and you know, people that come to watch us care about sports, we should do this thing. And she was like, okay. So McKenna and I were like, we got this.
I was so happy. I laughed so much. But I was happy to go to that instead of the Baylor game. I knew we were going to win, plus about half of my kids in AP were at the show, so I didn't want to miss it. Okay, so now we got a problem with Guatemala. Guatemala looks like they're leaning left. We can't have that, can we, Andrew? You start leaning left,
Start looking like mine.
that's not trustworthy. Start looking like Miles Dubois. So in '54, only a year after Iran's overthrow, we overthrow President Jacobo Arbenz Guzman. You have to write that down. We overthrew the president of Guatemala, who was getting to be a little bit too friendly with the Soviet Union. Was actually accepting arms from the Soviet Union. So we overthrew him. So now America seems like we are getting kind of successful with the CIA business. The problem is we're going to feel a little bit too arrogant. It's going to blow up in our face. When it comes to,
I feel like we also pissed a lot of people off.
well, maybe, but two things. One, when the CIA does it right, most people don't know it was America, right? You're supporting people who are inside the country anyway.
Why do we know about it now?
Well, yeah, first of all, there is a time limit, but also, I mean, we did it well enough to, I mean, people knew it was us. I guess when there was an overthrow,
it was done so well that it
I
happened.
mean, reporters knew, right? I mean, we knew enough to know that it was going on. We didn't, but like the evidence wasn't as specific.
Well,
Right.
Like, yeah, it's like communist or potentially communist country gets an overthrown president and a pro-American one gets put in.
Yeah, and a lot of Americans were okay with it, and also it wasn't like this was an era of 24-hour social media, right, where people in Guatemala were tweeting about this. These people had really little power and had no social, you know, sort of influence around the world. Okay, so let's talk about Ike. All right, we're going to finish this. I've got the packet I was going to have start with JFK today, but our 50th celebration, I forgot about that, so it's okay. Well, how about Eisenhower? All right. Let's. What do we think about Eisenhower? Let's do good and bad.
I like him.
Good and bad and the ugly. All right. What do you like about Eisenhower specifically, Hannah?
He led strongly, and like his foreign policy wasn't as invasive as other presidents.
You mean like the overthrowing of Iran and Guatemala's?
Yeah, it wasn't as.
It's Yeah, that's not invasive at all.
blatantly invasive.
Down low.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like he's more mature on his decisions.
More mature than who? He
Like,
didn't.
isn't like not like mature, but like he didn't just go to war just because Britain and France wanted to. Like he just.
Okay, so he exercised overt caution,
Yeah.
but he also exercised covert aggression.
I think he was definitely more effective, like in his foreign policy than anything domestic, and that's just because he didn't do. Oh, he did the Interstate Highway Act, but there wasn't like from what from what I was learning. I would remember what I was how the first foreign policy.
Okay, and the domestic policy. First of all, our government, our taxes were higher back then. The middle class was growing, right? But the economy was doing really well. There was a little hiccup. We had a recession in the middle, but for the most part, it was a prosperous era. That prosperous eras tend to make us think presidents are really good, right? If people are happy when those eras are going on, then people tend to overlook stuff. He was highly criticized for not working that much, for being on the golf course a lot. He was old. He was an older president, right? He was in the early 70s by the time he left office. But you're right, he was strong in the sense that he made decisions that were sometimes bold and sometimes very cautious, but he did it with some authority, right? And domestically, he had the Interstate Highway Act, which radically changed our country, and it was the largest government project we ever had. Domestically, though, what might have been a shortcoming of his? What could he have done a lot more aggressively that probably would have solved some problems?
Like, tell me.
Civil rights stuff.
Civil rights is always, historians have always said his civil rights record was mixed. Now, he was a man of his era. To say that he was a blatant racist, in today's world, we would have considered him a racist, right? He was not a pro-black guy. He wasn't aggressively anti-black like Wilson or something, but he thought that civil rights, he thought that people should just stop their complaining, things are getting better slowly. He didn't do as much with that. And that is one of the downsides to him. He kept the New Deal going. He was cautious. History has written Eisenhower to be a pretty effective president. But again, this is an era during the era of the Cold War, where what being president means is a really big deal, right? Warren Harding didn't have to deal with this, right? Thank goodness. And presidents in the late 19th century didn't deal with this. The presidency itself has gotten more powerful. All right, we will start with Kennedy on apparently Tuesday.
He was like definitely though a man in the 50s, like.